Do you have to connect then or not up
Well, I
there?
have to. There we go. All right, everybody. Welcome tonight to the SkolCast with Vikings Beat. We're going to hit you with the 2019 Minnesota Vikings schedule breakdown. We're starting right now.
All right, thank you. Hey, welcome everyone tonight for the Thursday night blast of SkolCast. We're going to walk through a little bit of the preseason here and then really get into the main kind of meats of the schedule, which is the season. And then Chris and I are going to talk about what he feels will be the overall record for their 16 game schedule compared to what my record is. Talk a little bit about what we're hearing out there, and then get you guys set and ready for next Thursday's live cast. So as we start kind of the first 4 games of the season, obviously the preseason is coming around the corner. We don't always put a ton of stock into the preseason games. Obviously, this is a time for the starters to come out and get some reps in and some live action when we're coming off of the training camps. Towards the beginning of the preseason, more certainly towards the end of the last couple games. Certainly the first couple games of the preseason when you get to see some of these other guys trying to make the rosters.
Hold on. We weren't live. Do it over.
Good evening,
Oh,
everyone.
wait.
You want to intro?
Hey, guys. Chris Wilkie, Jeremy Carter here with you with the Vikings Beat SkolCast tonight, Thursday night, a week before the NFL draft, and we are coming at you live with the Minnesota Vikings schedule breakdown now.
So welcome everyone to the Thursday night blast of SkolCast. We're going to start off and talk a little bit about the 4 games in the preseason that are going to take place for the Vikings here in August, and then get in really to the meat of the schedule, the 16-game schedule for the 2019 year. Chris is going to give his breakdown of what he feels and his predictions of their record will ultimately be at the end of the season. I will certainly give you my picks, and then certainly people, if they have comments or questions about some of the games coming up when we look at them week by week, please chime in and give us your feedback. So we'll start off with really the preseason games, the first 4 weeks in August, August 9th. They go to New Orleans Saints. Obviously, that's a game that we're very familiar with, that team. We've played them over the last several years, so we're very familiar with them in the first game. And then we have 2 home games back-to-back, August 18th and August 24th. We play the Seattle Seahawks, who again we'll see in the regular season on December 2nd. And then the second home game is the Arizona Cardinals on August 24th. And then we round out the preseason on the August 29th schedule, which is a Thursday night against the Buffalo Bills. And that's really where you'll see a little bit more of the starters playing maybe into the second, third quarter, maybe a little bit into the fourth. But they want to be fine-tuned and have a lot of their reps and a lot of their timing in place, and also give the defense a little bit of time to kind of work through some of the bugs so that we have a fast start during the season.
Absolutely. Good intro there, Jeremy, on the preseason, and let's get into the meat of the regular season, which was announced last night. You know, the NFL obviously takes great joy in making announcements of different things and making the build-up awesome. So, of course, last night was a big event with the schedule release, and lots of leaks came out throughout the day, and, we kind of watched those and followed those throughout the day, but let's get into it. So we'll start off week number 1. Sunday, September 9th. That's a home game against the Atlanta Falcons at noon. This will be the several years in a row now that we have opened at home. And once again, we have that home field advantage in week number 1. We opened last year against the 49ers. We came out victorious in that one. And I expect us to come out victorious against the Falcons here in this week number 1 matchup. We typically show real well at home. I believe Mike Zimmer actually may be undefeated in home openers as well. And so looking for a win out of this one. Although Atlanta, they didn't have a great season last year, but I think that's going to be a formidable opponent, though. Matt Ryan, excellent quarterback in the league, and looking forward to that matchup against our defense.
Yeah, I certainly, from some of the stuff I've been reading and some of the predictions, they do have the Atlanta Falcons being a little bit better than they were last year. But I also have that as a winnable game at home. Again, I'm optimistic that they're going to start off a little bit faster than they did last year through the first part of the season. And really, the way the schedule sets up, they really needed to have a pretty good record going into the middle part of the stretch, middle to the 2/3 of the stretch when we play some away games that are some significantly tough teams. So I do feel that this is a winnable game at home to start the season opener.
Absolutely. So we're both in agreement, 1-0 there. Week number 2, we take a look at that's 1 week later, Sunday, September 15th, excuse me, noon. And once again, just like last year, we are traveling to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers. Now, we know how last year turned out. We were down pretty big in that game, and Kirk Cousins brought us back on a pretty large comeback in the fourth quarter there, and we ended up with the tie, which some people would say is, well, like kissing your sister in a way. It's just not a good feeling to tie the Green Bay Packers, but we took the tie there at Lambeau, and we maybe should have lost. There was a couple controversial calls in that one where maybe there was a roughing the passer call on Clay Matthews that people say shouldn't have been called, but at the end of the day, we ended up with the tie. I've got us going to Green Bay this year, week number 2, and taking the L. And that one is fluid for me. That was one of my tougher picks for this schedule. Matt LaFleur is the new coach of the Green Bay Packers, and I don't know if he's going to be completely gelling with Aaron Rodgers by week number 2, but I don't know what kind of offense they're going to run over there either in Green Bay. But depending on how that all ebbs and flows there in the first couple weeks, we'll see. It'll be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, in my mind, I certainly think they have a new head coach and they're going to be running a new offensive scheme there with Aaron Rodgers. We have played them particularly well over the last few years at Green Bay, and if it wasn't maybe for 3 missed field goals last year from Carlson at Lambeau Field, we would have pulled that off with a victory. So, again, under the assumption that we're going to start out fast, and if we pick up some needed prospects in the draft, I think this is a winnable game away as well. So I have them beating Green Bay in week 2 in Lambeau.
All right. Week number 3, we're back home against the Oakland Raiders. So September 22nd at US Bank Stadium, home against the Oakland Raiders. And this one, John Gruden will be in his second year as coach of the Oakland Raiders. Now, the Oakland Raiders are not going to be as much of a disaster, I don't think, but they added Antonio Brown this last year in the offseason here to the wide receiving core. They still have David Carr. They've got a lot of different moves to make here in the draft and different things like that, but I would not think that this is a home game that you should definitely win against the Raiders. I've got them winning this game against the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm certainly on board with you there too. They have some pieces that they have to fill, particularly on the defensive side yet this year, and I'm assuming that they're going to pick some of those needs up in the draft. Either they're going to move up into some spots within the draft next Thursday with some of the additional picks that they got with some of the people that they've traded over the last 2 years. But they're going to be starting out slow, and even some of those rookies coming in, they'll have a little bit of an impact, but I don't see some of those rookies that they may get having as big of an impact at the beginning of the season as they will at the end of the season. So to me in this game, this is a winnable game in my mind for them. So I have them starting off 3-0 at the beginning of the first 3 weeks.
That's a great start. If that happens, I hope it does. Just wanted to make a note, too, for everybody that's watching online live right now, definitely comment. I see some comments kind of coming in right now. Appreciate all that, you guys. And also smash that reaction button as well. If you want to laugh at us or give us a wow or give us a like, really appreciate it. So definitely keep the comments and the reactions coming in. And also, if you don't mind, give us a share as well. If you want other people to watch us, share us on your page, and we will definitely keep these rolling. So thanks for all of you that are joining so far early on. And sorry we were a few minutes late. We had a couple technical difficulties, but we are online. So
way to hang in there.
Yep, appreciate it. So week number 4, kind of rounding out this first quarter of the season, we travel to Soldier Field. This is a late afternoon game on CBS. Soldier Field has been an absolute house of horrors for us. Last year was a disaster. We had 3 interceptions. Kirk Cousins threw 3 interceptions, I believe, in that game. We actually kept it closer than I thought we were going to, but that game, while it seemed like for a period of time was winnable, it just we never were able to take control over it. The previous year we did win at Chicago though, but I'm looking for us taking the L here in at Soldier Field. Excuse me, at Soldier Field, and starting off 2-2.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think early on in the season, I actually have them splitting with the Bears this year. But in Week 4, early on in the season, I think that Chicago defense always seems to come out fast at the beginning of the season with their playmakers that they have up front, and particularly in the middle, and then a couple of those guys in the secondary. I still don't know if we're going to be able to get all the needs that we need to in the draft, where we can really shore up our offensive line as sturdy and bold as we need to against that front seven of Chicago. And so, going over to the Windy City, playing in Soldier Field, I think our offense will be okay. They'll be able to hold their own against that, but I just do not see them, at least in Week 4, beating those guys, because I think the Chicago defense will be just a hair better than the amount of points that we can score in the offense, particularly if we don't shore up another third threat at receiver moving forward. I think Week 4, that's a tough game, so I have them losing. So in the first 4 games, I have them 3-1. You have them 2-2.
Absolutely. So, we differ a little bit, but in some of these we're on the same page. So, oh yeah, let's switch it over. Sorry, we didn't switch the Chicago graphic. So we'll go to Chicago. Week number 5. We're traveling to the New York Giants. That game will be on Fox, and October 6th. That one, I am thinking we should win that game on the road against New York. Eli Manning is in the twilight of his career, and I feel like every time we play Eli Manning, we pick him off 2 or 3 times. New York, I think, is an up-and-coming team with Saquon Barkley. They're going to definitely have to address quarterback in the draft here, but I just don't think they're going to have it for us this year, even though this is on the road at MetLife Stadium in New York. I definitely think that this is a win.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is a win in my book as well for some of the things that you mentioned. Certainly, Saquon Barkley, when we get into that game, he is going to be the focal point of their offense. Eli Manning isn't a real mobile quarterback. Every team that plays them knows that. So does the Vikings, and so they're going to create defensive schemes and rush the passer to get him moving around, where he is very inaccurate downfield, and we have strong secondary that will match up real well against them. With the departure of Odell Beckham, it doesn't give them a real super strong threat on the outside, which eases a little bit of the burden in the secondary to do some things, shift some things around, bring some corner blitzes, some safety blitzes, things that really confuse Eli Manning and some of the schemes that they're going to try to run. So I think with our offense, I think our offense is going to be poised to play well against them on the defense, and I think against their defense, and I think our defense will play well against them. So I do have them as a win going to the Giants.
Awesome. All right. Week 6, Philadelphia Eagles here at noon. A lot of people rumored that this game was going to be Thanksgiving evening. Yep. That didn't turn out to be true. So that would have been kind of fun. It would have been at US Bank Stadium. We would have had to eat our turkey and head down to the stadium early, but it didn't come to fruition. So Week 6, Philadelphia Eagles here at US Bank Stadium. We played them again last year after the 38-7 debacle in the NFC Championship game. We won't bring that up anymore. But
painful.
That was painful. But we do face them again. It was kind of a little bit of a redemption game last year with them. We beat them on the road, and that was the game when Linval Joseph had basically the interception off of the Stephen Weatherly strip sack, and he rumbled 70 plus yards for the touchdown. That was a really fun game where our defense started to play well last year around that time, and so we have them again this year. I have them coming into US Bank Stadium and losing. This is a win for me.
This is also a win for me. The only question mark that I have is really, can we keep out their front 4 of the Philadelphia Eagles? Just as much as like the Chicago's front 4, they have a real dominant, strong, powerful front 4. And so if we can shore up our offensive line and give Kirk Cousins a little bit more protection, I do think we can come out of that game at home with a win. So I have them at this point with a win, even before maybe some things shake out in the draft.
Definitely. Week 7, going to Detroit. So Uh, Typically, we have done well in Detroit. Last year we won. We started off extremely slow in that game last year. Uh, I listened to that game on the radio, and that was from not watching that game, that was as ugly of a first half as I remember seeing. I think that's when I kind of felt like the wheels were coming off of the offense last year. It took a Hail Mary to Kyle Rudolph right before the half to basically kind of get into that game and take the lead or tie. And I. I feel like though we usually play well at Detroit. If we have to have a fast start there though. This is a young team though with Matt Patricia at coach. They're definitely going to be trying to erase some of their past stigma of being just an average or below average club. They've been, kind of a 7-9, 8-8 club for quite a few years here, and Matt Patricia is going to want to take the next step. And so this is not going to be a cakewalk either. But I do have them coming out of Detroit with the win.
Yeah, I also do have them winning this game. One of the guys that's been a real killer for us has been Golden Tate. Every time we play him, he seems like he has 8 or 9 catches, 100 yards, a touchdown. A guy that's quick in the slot, can move around, and created some significant problems for us on the defensive side, even with across the field from Marvin Jones and some of those other kind of scat backs they have. But with Golden Tate gone, I think our defense will be, sound by this time of the season moving forward. I don't know if they have enough weapons on the offensive side to really get into a shootout with us. I know Matthew Stafford obviously has been a quarterback that's put up significant numbers over the years. I think they're going to address probably defense in the draft, so I don't know that they're going to add a ton of offensive weapons, at least in the beginning rounds from the stuff that I've been reading and looking at. So I do have them going to Detroit and getting a victory.
Nice. So we're going to finish out the first half of the regular season schedule here. We come back home and we face the Washington Redskins home against US Bank Stadium. This is our Thursday night matchup, so that's actually going to be a short week for us. We'll be playing football 4 days later, and this is our one time we have to do a quick turnaround. Luckily, we don't have to travel to one of the east or west coasts. We just have to travel over to Detroit and then back home for that Thursday night game against Washington. So Thursday night, this one, Case Keenum is coming back to Minneapolis, his first game back in Minneapolis since the Minneapolis Miracle. I am looking at this game. Washington has been kind of in the doldrums for a number of years. Alex Smith last year just completely destroys his leg. Now they have no quarterback for this year. They've been trying to bring guys in that, just off the street that can play.
Yep.
So they went ahead and traded for Case Keenum from Denver, and so he will be leading their team this season. So I just don't see this one falling through the cracks for us here, though. I mean, unless we were to pull like a Buffalo Bills game last year where we were an absolute disaster, I think this is a win. So we're looking really good first half of the season for myself at 6-2 with this win against Washington.
So there's really some underlying stories going on with this Redskins and Vikings game, right? You got Case Keenum coming back into the Viking Stadium who was here before we let him go, but you also have Kirk Cousins playing his old team, who didn't want to franchise him because they didn't think he was the quarterback of the future. So it's going to be an interesting kind of dynamic in above the game itself going on. I do have the Vikings winning this game as well. Again, you mentioned the 0-2, the Buffalo Bills that we ended up kind of running over ourselves at home. This was the game that I actually thought that same thing last week when I started looking at the teams that we played. We didn't know obviously what the schedule was, but I thought here was one of these teams that maybe not be playing real well at the beginning of the season, with just some of the things going on, and some things not necessarily set in stone as far as their roster and what they're looking to do. But I do believe we have enough defensive fortitude to stop them with their offense, and so I feel that that's a victory against Washington Redskins. So for me, in the first 8 games of the season, again, I'm very optimistic. I think they won't have a slow start like they did last year. I think we have a lot of our core players back. I think Zimmer won't allow that to happen again this year. I think with the coaching staff that they brought with Kubiak and his regime, they understand how to get people playing up to their level. A lot of contracts that are in place are for multi-years now, so I think some of those side conversations aren't really looming out there. So a lot of these players can really focus on going out there and putting the best product on the field. So I have them starting 7-1, which I think, in my mind, you need to have a fast start with this schedule because on the back end of this schedule, I've got some losses, in a row against some of these teams that we're looking at, and we'll touch on that.
You bet. All right, week 9. I know on a personal standpoint, this is one of the games that we are strongly considering being at in person. So we're going to bring you the SkolCast from whatever away game that we're going to be at. But I know this is one that we're considering. Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead, Sunday, November 3rd. This is week number 9, and what I've read about Arrowhead Stadium, what I've read about all that is that there is no better. It's almost, other than Lambeau, it's kind of football Americana. It's nostalgia. It's kind of everything. It's a college football atmosphere. So Kansas City, though, you look at them, unbelievable team, unbelievable quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. He is going to be tough to stop in this matchup. He threw for over 5,000 yards last year. Was it 50 touchdowns? He was incredible. The stuff he can do, the sidearm throw, is just a gunslinger. And especially at Arrowhead, I have this as a loss.
Yeah, you certainly touch on it. I mean, there's no doubt about the offensive weapons that they have on the offensive side of the ball. Every place you look, wide receivers, they've got Tyreek Hill, who's just a burner, who's quick, he can move around. He's a matchup nightmare for any cornerback just because of the sheer speed he has down the field. He can turn on a dime. And you got Travis Kelce in there, the tight end, who really is a wide out playing tight end, very athletic, hard to stop, hard to match up against a linebacker. So we're going to struggle a little bit against their offense. There's no question about that. We're going to obviously try to create schemes and try to create some matchups, but we also, as we saw last year, Patrick Mahomes is very athletic. He can move around, he can run, he can throw from unorthodox positions, and he has an extremely strong arm. So that'll be a tough matchup on that side. The piece for me that's a little bit of struggle is they have lost some playmakers on the defensive side. So if they can pick up some of those pieces in the draft, or they can fill some of those in with some roster moves or spots that were as productive, and I'm thinking of Ford as an example for them on the defense, because let's be honest, in some of those games, they had to score 38 points because they gave up 35. So if they can keep their defense and improve that a little bit, I think that's a tough matchup for us at Arrowwood, and that is an extremely tough place to play. So I have them losing that game as well at Arrowwood.
For sure. So moving on to week number 10, we have we're on the road a couple weeks in a row here. We're heading to Dallas, to Jerry's Palace. So this is November 10th. This is a Sunday night football game. And what is the statistic about Kirk Cousins winning primetime games? He's
not good.
0 in primetime games. So he's going to have to break that tendency or that streak at some point. I'm hoping by this game he's already done that, and he would have won that Thursday night game against the Redskins. But if he didn't do it there, I really want him to do it here. So looking at this game, Dallas, again, Dallas is kind of all over the board for me in terms of Dak Prescott at quarterback, Ezekiel Elliott at running back. Jason Witten has come out of retirement now. I mean, is he 40 years old? I mean, he's not. I know he's not 40, but how old is he? He's out of retirement. I know he wants to try to get a ring, but Dallas they're kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team for me. You don't know which one's going to show up. They could torch you for 40 points, or we could have a low-scoring affair like we did here when they came to U.S. Bank Stadium 2 seasons ago and we lost that game. So I actually have this game going to Dallas, Sunday Night Football, as a win.
That's pretty optimistic. I don't know if we're as optimistic as Dave Woolen is, who thinks they're going to have an undefeated season. We certainly would love to see that, but I don't know if that's necessarily a realistic schedule. But hey, we can always hope for it, right?
Exactly.
So going to Dallas, in my mind, I see this as a loss. I see back-to-back losses for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Dak Prescott had his best passing year of his career in the NFL. I do think we're going to have a hard time stopping Ezekiel Elliott in the run game with that offensive line down there. We've got some quick pass rushers, but we don't have quite the beef to match up against their offensive line. And so I think the best way to keep our offense off the field is to continually run it at us 4 or 5 yards a pop. Eventually, Ezekiel's going to break a 15-yarder on there. And as you looked at their Dallas at the end of last year, 2018 season, did you see how good their defense came on at the end of the year? They have a lot of young, athletic guys that finally stepped up, got the scheme that they were trying to run down there. I think that is going to create a little bit of problem matchup for us with some of the athletic guys on the outside, particularly outside linebackers, a couple of their defensive ends, and their cornerbacks played very well at times last year. I think some of that stuff will be an improvement this year with some of those young guys moving forward. So that's going to be a tough place to play down there in Dallas. I think with their run game, I think with their offensive line, I think it'll be a fairly close game, but I do have us losing that game. So I have us losing back-to-back 2 away games in this part of the season.
They got a nice linebacker down there, Leighton Vander Esch.
They do.
He's fast. He gets to the ball. He's a good linebacker. All right. We will one more game before we get to the bye, and that we're returning home. That is a noon game on CBS Sunday, November 17th against the Denver Broncos. Again, we've played Denver in the last couple years. We went out to Mile High. We played them. We didn't win that game out at Mile High, but now we have Denver coming into US Bank Stadium and taking us on. They still have some remnants from that Super Bowl 50 defense. I don't think that they are the same team that won Super Bowl 50, but I definitely think that they have Von Miller, who's an unbelievable playmaker on the defense. And they traded for Joe Flacco at quarterback. So, they're trying to stopgap. John Elway is trying to stopgap the quarterback situation there. He ditched Case Keenum after 1 year, traded for Joe Flacco, who we knew was going to be leaving the Ravens anyway. But so he's trying to stopgap, and I think he's trying to figure out his quarterback situation anyway. But Joe Flacco is not a mobile quarterback. I think that bodes well for the Vikings defense in this game. And I think he is, we're going to probably end up with a couple interceptions on him, or for sure a few sacks. I have this as a win.
Yeah, you certainly know what you're going to get with Joe Flacco, right? He's not real mobile. He is going to move the ball around. He's going to throw it. So our Vikings defense is going to be prepared for them to be throwing the football. I don't particularly see Denver picking up a quarterback this year, or at least in the first round, to kind of offset Joe Flacco or try to push some competition there. But I do think so. If they don't go the quarterback route, I do think they're going to pick up another pass rusher, either an outside linebacker, an inside linebacker. Maybe someone from Michigan. I'm thinking of that's athletic, that can bolster that defense, and that will create a little bit of problems for us on the offensive side. But the piece for me is I don't know that they have a strong enough offensive scheme, enough offensive weapons to match up, particularly pound for pound against the Vikings defense at this stage in the game. So I do have the Vikings winning against the Broncos that week.
Perfect. So with that, week number 12 is bye week. And so we'll do a couple housekeeping items with the bye here. So the first thing is, guys, appreciate you all joining. We definitely want to ask you to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/VikingsBeat. Follow us on Twitter @VikingsBeat. We are also now, as of tonight, starting to dual stream our broadcast both on Facebook Live and YouTube. So we will be hitting a bigger market. We'll be streaming on Facebook Live. We will be also streaming on YouTube, and these broadcasts will be available after they are completed on both of those channels. So appreciate you guys joining. A couple comments, a couple questions. We have a question from Anthony in Hutchinson. Who was a better linebacker in his prime, Scott Studwell or Chad Greenway? Boy, that's a tough one there, Anthony. Scott Studwell, perennial All-Pro at linebacker back in the 80s. Really tough defender, hard-nosed linebacker. But I think you're a toss-up there, in my opinion. Chad Greenway is also just a Viking that shored up the linebacker position for 10 years, and he did great in his own right. So that's a toss-up for me.
I would say for me, I would hedge Scott Stillwell just a little bit. I think Chad Greenway was a little bit better in the open field as far as pass schemes, defending the pass. But I think Studwell back in that day with that defense, he just was a more legitimate run stopper. They would blitz him a lot. He would come up. He'd be in the 4 down technique, 3 down technique. They'd push him up on the line. They'd move him around. And really back then, before offenses really became these high prolific passing offenses, it was run the ball first, right? Run the ball, get in a manageable 3rd down situation, and then spread the ball around. And he was like a lineman playing linebacker. So from that sense, I give him just a little bit of edge over Chad Greenway. Although Chad was a solid linebacker for many years, fan favorite in the community, did a lot of great things. But Studwell was just kind of that blue collar grinder, broken nose, the tape all over the place. So, but
Absolutely.
good question.
Yeah, awesome. And one question from Brandon out there. Are you worried about the Bears matchup? Here, those guys are darn good. Absolutely, Brandon. The Bears swept us last year, so we are definitely concerned about them this coming season. And I know Brandon very well, and he is a big Bears fan, so definitely concerned about them this coming year.
Yeah, he must have not been on right away at the beginning of the SkolCast. And we in week 4 when we play them, Chris and I both have the Vikings losing to them in week 4. So I have them splitting in the season. I don't know, Chris. What do you have them?
Yeah,
You have them.
yeah, I'll reveal that here shortly.
Okay.
But-
We don't want to give it away. It's like
Exactly.
opening a Christmas gift on Christmas Day, right?
Exactly. All right, with that, let's move on and finish off the season here. So, week number 13. This is a Monday night matchup. We once again travel for a Monday night game to Seattle. And we know how that went last year. We lost that game. That game was scoreless into the second half. We ended up losing that game, and the next day, John DeFilippo was fired as offensive coordinator of the Vikings, and so that started the domino effect of the on the offensive side of the ball. But Seattle Stadium, I have not personally been there, but with the 12s and the noise of the crowd,
loud.
and it's loud. There, again, I just don't see us coming out of this with a win. Russell Wilson just signed a $140 million contract. I think that he's the real deal, and he's primed as well, and he's very elusive. We've done a decent job of keeping him in the pocket and kind of containing him for the most part. But last year he broke one or two big ones on us. But I think that the CenturyLink field dynamic is too much for us to overcome. This is a loss for me.
Well, there's a reason why he got that big contract, right? Is there any quarterback in the league that you can think of outside of maybe Aaron Rodgers in some of his prime that in the big games, in the high visible games, the Monday night footballs, the Sunday evening football games, that plays better than Russell Wilson? There isn't a guy. He's there. He performs at the highest level when the games matter. He's going to be a top-notch quarterback again this year. He's gonna lead that team. I think probably to 11-5 record is where I have them. They're definitely going to be a playoff contending team. The piece that I think is the Vikings are going to struggle with a little bit again this year is Seattle got better as the season progressed at running the ball. They became their identity became ground and pound with their big offensive line. They have a couple bruiser running backs there that just they knew that you were going to try to bring up 8 men in the box, but they still ran it anyway, and they ran it effectively. And so I don't know if we can match through 4 quarters that type of 8-9 guys in the box, and then give Russell Wilson some freedom to move around on isolation with our cornerbacks out to the wideouts and make that be effective. So that's going to be a very challenging game against those guys. I do think it'll be a close game, but I have us losing that game in Seattle.
Yeah, we're in agreement on that one. So let's go to the last quarter of the season, and let's finish this out. After that Monday night game, we return home for on Sunday, December 9th. Sunday, December 8th. We are at home against the Detroit Lions, noon game. Excuse me. And we definitely, typically have the Lions number at home. I know 2 seasons ago we lost a game on a kind of a last-second deal there, but we did beat them last year at home. And I think we sacked Matthew Stafford last year 10 times in the home game, and I definitely think that this is a win for the Vikings at home against the Lions.
Yeah, I certainly do too. I think we sweep the Detroit Lions this year. I think we beat them there, and then I think we beat them at home. So I have them um, beating those guys.
Definitely. Okay. For our final road game of the season, we travel back to Los Angeles this year. Except for we are not going to play the Rams. We're going to play the Chargers, and the Chargers are building a new stadium with the Rams in conjunction. So 2 years ago, the Chargers moved from San Diego to L.A., and they are building a stadium with the Rams. But for right now, they're playing in like a 27,000 seat soccer stadium. I do know that one of our friends, Mr. Andrew Smith, will be heading for that game this year. I talked
Yeah.
to him. He's heading down to LA for that Chargers game. But I expect that stadium to be at least half full, if not more, of Vikings fans. So even though the Chargers had a really good record this last year, they made it to the playoffs. Phillip Rivers is aging, and I definitely I think that we're going to go down to LA and we're going to come out with a win there against the Chargers in LA.
Yeah, I have them losing to the Chargers out there. A couple things. Philip Rivers is aging, but he can still move the ball around. He's a very accurate passer. I thought a couple of the receivers, some of the younger guys, really came on strong towards the end of the season last year. And let's not forget about Melvin Gordon, who played very well last year and was in some consideration for one of the top running backs in the league there for a while until he had a little bit of injury there towards the end of the season. Their defense is fairly solid on that side of the ball. I think it's going to be a tough place to play late in the season. And I think because we're squeezed in between three NFC division games, you always hate to say that you look past the game that you're playing and look to the end of the season and look to the last couple of games in your division. But I think that's kind of one of those catch games. Chargers are a good team. They played very well last year. They had a good record moving in. So I think it's going to be difficult for us to win there. I think it'll be a close game. I think our defense will keep us in the game there. But I think their defense has come on pretty strong too towards the end of the season with some of the schemes that they were running there and some of the uniform blitzes and some of the kind of hidden schemes that they're running. And I think that maybe give us a little bit of problem on the grass out there. And so I have us losing that game out there.
All right. Week 16, we come back here for a Monday night game the day before Christmas Eve. We are going to be facing our arch rival, the Green Bay Packers, in a Monday night matchup at US Bank Stadium on the 23rd of December. And this one, once again, Aaron Rodgers has not won a game in US Bank Stadium. A lot of people would say he's due. I don't think he is. I think when the Green Bay Packers come here, I think there is, especially on a Monday night game, the crowd is going to be amped up. The place is going to be loud, and people are going to be ready to roll for that game on Monday night. So I guess we'll see where we're at that point in the season. If Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur have it figured out and they are gelling, it's going to be a tight game. There's no doubt about that, but I definitely think that we're going to come out of that one with the win at home.
So before I get into my pick, Donnie DeMeyer asks, what's it going to take for the Vikings to improve their prime time record? So in my mind, there's a couple things that stick to mind. Obviously, the buzzword is Kirk Cousins. Can he play better in the big games? And I think he will this year for us. I think particularly having a season under his belt, I think he has more time to gel with the receivers, gel with the new coaching staff that's here. I think that particularly helps. But the other side of the ball that I noticed last year in some of the primetime games on our defense is we came out amped up. We came out ready to play in that second quarter. We had a lot of energy. The crowd was in it. And then something goes wrong. We have a couple offsides. We have a missed route in the secondary where we give up a big gain or we give up a touchdown, and then all of a sudden you saw this little letdown, and then they never were able to pick up some of that steam back on the defense to really shut down the other offense. It just kind of became, kind of leaking on defense, and not that they didn't play well, but they didn't play to the level maybe that they did in the first quarter or two. So I think for us to play well in prime time, both sides of the ball need to play well and they need to play consistent for fourth quarters. I don't know what your thoughts are. That's kind of what I saw in some of those big games.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head there as far as the defensive piece and the team kind of coming out with a fast start and just playing a full 4 quarter game. But I think for me, it's like your first point touched on, and it's Kirk Cousins. He has to be the difference maker in these primetime games, and I feel like he uh, I'm not trying to criticize him, but I feel like sometimes the lights shine a little bit too bright for him in those moments, and I hope that he can get over that and get over that stigma and get over that the way that he, you know, just needs to let loose in those types of games and those situations and do what he does, and that's stand in the pocket, find some receivers, throw guys open. He does that very well. And I think if he does that, I think we're going to be, he's going to, like I talked about earlier, he's going to break his record of his losing record in primetime games, and he's going to propel us to hopefully a couple primetime wins if he can up his game as well.
Right. Well, let's not forget too. In some of the primetime games we had last year, we had a bad matchup with the team that we were playing, and what I mean by that is some of the teams that we played in primetime had good defensive schemes going in, particularly on the defensive line of the ball. And so that created some offensive problems for us in the offensive line. Kurt had to move around. He tried staying in the pocket, which I thought at times he actually played better moving outside the pocket and throwing than he did standing in the pocket and taking hits. But I think also that what compounded that piece too is you saw a little bit of some of our receivers not being able to win their one-on-one battles in some of those games too. And so when you don't have a whole lot of time to pass, and you don't want to move out of the pocket. You want to stay in the pocket and pass your receivers because you're running timing routes and they can't quite get open and you only have 2 or 3 seconds to pass. That becomes problematic for the offensive side of the ball. So I think there was a combination of maybe some of the matchups in certain primetime games too didn't bode very well for us. But at the end of the day, you still got to be able to perform. Your offensive line has to perform well. Your receivers have to perform well. Kirk Cousins has to make the plays that he's supposed to and make some of the ones that you maybe don't think he's supposed to in order for you to be a Super Bowl or a playoff contender. So thanks for the question. Back to the Green Bay Packers and my pick. I do have us winning that game at home. I think by the time we get to these schedules, these 2 games at the end of the schedule, these 2 probably are a must-win for us. We're going to start off in my estimation. I think we'll start off the beginning of the season fairly well. I think we're going to run into some real tough teams on the road after the second half of the season starts, and then you really get into 3 of the 4 divisional games at the end of the season. And I think that's where we're going to see kind of who shakes out in the NFC North. But so I think they will be ready to play at home, regardless. It's the Green Bay Packers. The Vikings always are amped to play those guys. So I have a win there.
Good. So the season finale, we do face the Chicago Bears, and the NFL schedule creators have a fetish with scheduling the Chicago Bears in the season finale at home against the Minnesota Vikings for some reason. That game has been at home against the Chicago Bears in 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018, and now 2019. Yep. I don't know why that continues to happen year after year. There's been a few years there where that game didn't mean anything at the end. Last year, the game meant something. If we would have won, we would have made the playoffs.
Yep.
Chicago's defense was too overwhelming for us. Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, absolute wreckers inside there. We had no answer for them on the offensive line. We're starting to address that. I'm hoping that we have a little bit more of an answer for them this coming year. But I look at this finale game, and if all bodes well, this game could be for the NFC North title. I mean, if we're looking at it that way, the winner of this game is scheduled for noon, but if everything works out well and the Bears beat who they should beat and they look like the team they did last year, I would expect this game to be flexed out to Sunday Night Football on NBC and for us to battle them for the NFC North title. So that's kind of what I'm looking at if all this shakes out the way it should. So that being said, I have this game as a loss. I think the Bears are going to sweep us. I still don't think that our line is going to be there. We'll see what we do in the draft in a week. We're going to touch on that here in a couple minutes, what we have coming up. But I have this game at home as a loss. I don't know if we have an answer for Akeem Hicks, for Khalil Mack. The only thing that could sway this game for me is if Mitch Trubisky becomes Mitch Trubisky and throws us the ball, turns it over. In the last game of last year, the finale, he kept it safe. There were no turnovers, and he used his feet to beat us, and that killed us in that last game. So I have this as a loss in the finale, but we'll talk about the final results here in a second, but I have it as a loss.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. You hit the nail on the head at the end. I was going to say the underlying theme of that game, besides us getting destroyed on the offensive line, was Trubisky. Not his passing, his running. That's what killed us. Every time we get into third downs, third and sixes, third and sevens, he was able to scramble out, run down the field, and get a first down with his legs, not with his arm. I do think we're going to have a better defensive scheme going in. Again, if we think about the predication of Zimmer being a defensive guru and a guy that can scheme up defenses to stop the threats or to stop the things that had been causing nightmares for them in the past, I think he has that ability to do that late in the season, depending on where we're at. I also do think Kubiak and that offensive coaching system, not that they're going to stop that defensive front completely, because I don't, even with some of the guys that we're talking about picking up in the draft, I don't still see that. I mean, there were plays last year in that game where we had guys double teamed and they were still running our guys over like a freight train. So we're not going to stop Hicks. We're not going to stop Khalil Mack. We're not going to stop their inside linebackers from blitzing. If we can stop them, half the time, and the other half make some positive plays, I think we got a shot. I think that the offensive system, they will scheme quick plays to move around to avoid some of that pressure. I do have us winning that game at the end. It is a must. I think it's going to be a must win for us. I think it's going to be a close game. I do think we can beat them. I think our offense plays a little bit better. I think our offensive line will play a little bit better. You can't play much worse than what we played last year. But I think our defense will play better against their offense. And that's the tipping point for me, is I think we'll have a better answer to stop Trubisky moving around the pocket, running around, killing us with his legs. And so I think we'll do a good job of containing him a little bit better this time around. So I have them as a win.
Awesome. So for me, so that concludes the schedule. So for me, tally it up for me, I have them at 11-5. I know that might seem a little bit optimistic, but if everything would shake out that way, I have them at 11-5. There were a couple of those games that could go either way, but I have them at 11-5.
I had them at 10-6 when it's all said and done. And again, for me, the first part of the season, which is what I'm predicating on, we start faster. We come out, we're hitting on all cylinders on the offensive side with our receivers, our quarterback, our offensive line is a little bit more shored up. Again, we talked about it on the last time. They're going to do a little bit more zone blocking scheme this year than they did last year, and so I think that will help some of the pass rush and some of those things that we struggled with last year. So I have them at 10-6. The middle of that season, with some of those away games and some of the away games that we're playing, I think we have the 8th strongest season, or strongest strength of schedule this year. And so a lot of those teams that are on our schedule either were playoff teams or they were just outside the playoffs. So we don't have really any games where I say we come in and we just blow out someone. I just don't see that. But we're gonna have to play good on both sides. But 10-6 is where I think realistically we could be. But anywhere between, depending, if we lose a couple of these games at the beginning of the season, we could be anywhere from 8-8 to 11-5. I think 11-5 is the best case probably scenario. Maybe 11 or 12-4. But there's a couple of away games that are going to be a struggle to we'd have to play flawless.
Absolutely. Good. Well, that wraps up our schedule breakdown. So we've gone through and taken a look at the schedule and made some predictions. Appreciate you watching. Let's kind of wrap it up here and to put a bow on it. So next week, we will be broadcasting live 1 week from tonight. We'll be here on our channel on YouTube. We'll be on Facebook Live. We'll be broadcasting live on both of those streaming media areas. So look forward to joining you on there. pop in next Thursday. We'll also be at Main Street Sports Bar here in Hutchinson. That's where we'll be broadcasting from. So we're going to be down there. We'll have our entire streaming and podcast set up down there, and we're looking forward to, you can come join us live if you'd like down there. We're going to have a lot of giveaways. We're going to have some different prizes and different things to hand out down there. So definitely look forward to seeing you next Thursday for that pro football draft that's going to be happening. We're going to start broadcasting at 6 o'clock from there, and we'll look forward to having you guys down there. There's a couple other things I want to highlight quick before we leave. The other one is that we do have we're doing like a little Facebook promo. So if you go to our facebook.com/VikingsBeat and you look, there's a post out there that has a $25 gift card to Main Street Sports Bar that they're giving away. So go ahead and like and comment that on that post, and you'll be automatically entered into that drawing for that $25 gift card. So we appreciate the support from Main Street Sports Bar, Ryan down there, and all of his crew, that they're going to provide with not only the gift card but also in a week from tonight with the draft. So that's where that's at. Follow us on Twitter at VikingsBeat. Follow us on Facebook.com/VikingsBeat. And that's all I have. Jeremy, you want to wrap it up with anything?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Again, thanks everyone for watching. If you have nothing going on next Thursday at 6 o'clock down at Main Street Sports Bar, come on down. We'd love to see you, and we'd love to have a little interaction during the SkolCast and get your guys' thoughts on some of the draft picks going on. So we look forward to seeing you then.
Awesome, guys. We will sign off for now, but we'll see you in a week. Chris and Jeremy with the Vikings Beat SkolCast. Have a good week. We'll see you in a week at the draft.
Take care.